Well, hello, this is Michael from Your Future Books, and tonight we have Fernando Ferfal Aguirre. He is from Argentina. He just wrote a book called The Modern Survival Manual, Surviving the Economic Collapse. How are you doing today, Fernando?
Hi, I'm doing fine, just great.
What would you say was the objective of your book?
The objective of my book was to give people a manual that was related to to things that actually happened, in contrast to a lot of manuals that are supposedly of survival and preparedness, but actually prepare you for things that most likely will never happen. If you pick your average survival manual, it's either wilderness survival oriented, which is just great because I love that stuff myself. I like camping, and it's focused maybe on getting lost in the wilds or in a plane crash.
Right.
Or you have other kind of survival manuals that are, surviving either the end of the world or some nuclear catastrophic event. But these are all manuals that don't give you actual tools to use during hard times, such as, for example, what's going on here right now with an economic crisis and an economic collapse, or even other events. For example, during a civil war, for example, people think that everyone hunkers into their homes and just stays there, and it's not that way. People keep living their lives, keep going to their jobs, even if these terrible things happen.
Absolutely. I like how you keep it to the point. It's very practical for people living in cities.
It's because, it's actually hard to find a place that is as isolated as you see maybe on Man versus Wild, for example. Everyone, it's fascinating TV. You watch it and it's, wow, it's the guy in the jungle alone. But when are you actually in such a situation? It's almost impossible. You're always, living in the city, living in the suburbs, commuting from one place to another, maybe going through some stretch of land, but you're not really in a desert in Sahara or in a jungle in the Amazons. You're always in a place. It's actually very hard to find such a place. You have to make an effort to get there.
Exactly.
And
most people live in cities, and this is what you tell them how to survive in what.
Of course, and there's lots of greater dangers and greater problems and challenges in a city living in the suburbs than in the wild.
Exactly. One thing you mention a lot in your book is 3 is 2, 2 is 1, and 1 is none.
Yeah, supplies, the kind of supplies you keep in hand, there's got to be a logic to it. You just don't have to go and buy tons of stuff that you actually don't need. Mostly you need water and food, of course, because that's the basic things you need to stay alive. So what happens is, for example, what happened in our case in the 2001 crisis when supermarkets got looted and stayed closed for a while, or people couldn't access their accounts to buy these items, this stuff you actually need to stay alive. Those are priorities you need to work on.
People were not expecting this to happen.
No, not at all. The looting and such, it happened within hours. I remember that day. I mentioned it a couple of times. Yeah, I woke up and hear drums, and it's pretty strange. You wake up and hear drums. I looked through the window and saw a mass of people that were heading to a supermarket to loot, and they were getting into the little stores over there.
Wow.
It's a pretty chaotic situation. It's kind of, I don't think it was that scary because my house has fences and it's pretty safe. I've always handled firearms, and I had firearms there as well. So in your mind you think, what do I do if this guy jumps over the fence and tries to break in? It's something maybe a lot of people never experience, and it's a bit scary. 3 is 2, 2 is 1, and 1 is none. That's something I got told by a friend of mine that is in the Marines.
What would you tell anybody that hasn't read the book right now and might be listening to experts saying that the U.S. is and the global economy is rebounding? We don't need to learn about survival.
Well, I'd say it's important to have a survival and preparedness mindset no matter what happens. There's a lot of people that lost their jobs, and they're having a very hard time finding another one. And that's something we saw here. And what we saw happened in 2001. So now that it's 2009, I can tell you that the consequences haven't just disappeared or gone away in any way. The middle class just became poor, and they stayed poor, so there's not much news there anymore. Those guys that got fired in 2001, those had kids, and those kids are now are 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, or they were 5-year-olds back then, and now they're 15 years old. And those kids with 15 or 14 years old are heavy-armed criminals these days. The main issue here right now is just finding ways of staying safe, because of all the crime situation we have, you know, that's something that we didn't have before, and it's a direct consequence of the economic crisis.
Fernando, what would you say as far as money? How would you recommend protecting your money? Where would you deposit your money?
Well, what happened here during the crisis, during the 2001 collapse, was that banks just closed their doors, and they closed, and people were left banging on the doors with hammers and pots, which became pretty much a popular icon of the crisis. People banging with pots, you know, empty pots as a symbol against the bank doors. They just closed because our economic was based on the peso, 1 peso pegged to $1. So you had people here earning maybe 10,000 pesos a month, and that was $10,000. It's actually a lot of money, and it wasn't realistic because our currency wasn't actually worth as much as the dollar in any way. But it was an artificial situation created by our Minister of Economy back then, Domingo Cavallo, and it simply collapsed the entire economy. Imagine having all your savings stolen by these guys. It gets the worst out of you. Crime went up a lot was because criminals knew this. Criminals knew a lot of people just weren't trusting banks anymore, and they had their money in their homes.
Exactly.
Okay? What I would recommend doing is having in your house 2 safes. They're not that expensive. They're pretty cheap. You don't need the best safe in the market. Just buy a couple of safes and keep one relatively visible in behind somewhere inside a locker or a dressing room. Something that if a criminal breaks into your house, he goes looking for that and he finds it. Or if he gets you at gunpoint, you go there and you open that. And I'd split my money, put most of the money in a second safe that's going to be heading somewhere else much better than the first one. If you really want to be prepared for something like what happened here, what you should be doing is putting a large percentage of that money you keep into precious metals, in silver and gold.
What kind of feedback have you been receiving?
And I actually did get a lot. I even got feedback from people that have, you know, experience in special forces, and they said, you know, the stuff you write about self-defense and weapons, that's just perfect. It's one of the best pieces I've read my entire life, and that was like, wow, you know, a guy with such an experience saying I'm doing things right, that meant a lot for me. But every now and then I get an email from women that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and, you know, they tell me, because of what I've been reading and because of your book, I ended up buying lots of stuff, lots of food. I'm preparing my family better, and I bought a weapon and learned how to shoot, and I feel much safer now, and I know I can take care of myself. So when I get those emails every now and then, I feel very good about myself because I feel I'm actually helping people and making a positive impact on their lives.
Now, your latest project, Fernando, that you're working on.
Yeah, it's a website called grabtheapple.com. It's something we've been working on, and we have, you know, articles there, and we've launched a couple of days ago a preparedness course that is videos, weekly videos, well, regarding all these things.
Well, thank you very much, Fernando.
Okay, Michael, thank you a lot, and I hope things go well for you and the rest of the people in USA.